So, at this point, Pharaoh calls for Moses, and Aaron asks him to says, "Please get rid of these frogs, and I'll let the people go." And then, Moses asks him, "Okay, how soon do you want us to do this?" And in verse 10, Pharaoh says, "Tomorrow." And he said, "Be it according to my word, that thou mayest know there is no one like unto the Lord our God. And the frogs shall depart from thee, and from thy houses, and from thy servants, and from thy people. They shall remain in the river only." Okay? That's saying tomorrow all the frogs will disappear. That's prophecy 170. Okay? And in verses 12 through 13, Moses and Aaron did exactly what was prophesied. Verse 13 says, "And the frogs died out of the houses, out of the villages, and out of the fields." And skipping down to verse 15, talks about when Pharaoh saw that all the frogs were dead, he hardened his heart. Now notice that says he hardened his heart. You know, God has not yet hardened Pharaoh's heart. He will, but right now the hardening of the heart is Pharaoh's own doing. So Pharaoh is in fact setting himself up for God to justifiably harden his heart. Understand that? Okay, verse 16. "And the Lord said unto Moses, Say unto Aaron, Stretch out thy rod, and smite the dust of the land, that it may become lice throughout all the land of Egypt." That's prophecy 171. And they did, in verse 17, "It comes to pass, lice did come out of the dust of the earth, and it came through without all the land of Egypt." All right. And then skipping down to verse 20. Sorry. Verse 20. "And the Lord said unto Moses, Rise up early in the morning, and stand before Pharaoh. Lo, he cometh forth to the water, and say to him, Thus saith the Lord, Let my people go, that they may serve thee. Else, if thou wilt not let my people go, behold, I will send swarms of flies upon thee." That's prophecy 172. "Upon thy servants and upon thy people." And in verse 22, it says, "I will sever in that day of the land of Goshen, in which my people dwell, that no swarms of flies shall be there. To end thou that I may know us, I am the Lord in the midst of the earth." That's prophecy 173. And in 23, verse 23, "And I will put division between my people and thy people. Tomorrow shall this sign be." And verse 24, "It all comes to pass, the flies are spread throughout all of Egypt." Pharaoh calls for Moses and for Aaron. He says, "Go and make your sacrifices. Just please." Okay. And Moses said, he says, "Go and sacrifice to your God in the land." He's not permitting them to leave into the wilderness, and Moses protests because if the Egyptian people saw the kind of sacrifices they made, the Egyptian people would be stoned to death. So compromise is reached. Verse 28, "And Pharaoh says, I will let you go that you may sacrifice to your Lord in the wilderness, only you shall not go very far away. Entreat for me." Moses said, "Behold, I will go out from thee, and I will entreat the Lord that the swarms of flies may depart from Pharaoh and his servants, and from his people tomorrow." Okay, that's prophecy 175, which came to pass in verse 31, "And the Lord did according to the word of Moses. He removed the swarms of flies from Pharaoh and from his servants and from his people. There remained not one. Verse 32, and Pharaoh hardened his heart. At this time also would not let the people go. Pharaoh just keeps holding on to the belief that that God could not, apparently he's believing that God could possibly not send anything worse than what's already come. I mean, why else would he keep hardening his heart? Why would he else keep choosing to harden his heart? I'm telling you, this is a man who is just drunk with power and just so full of pride. He simply does not want to look weak in front of the people. It's just a motive, just a huge, huge mixture of stuff that's leading him to do these things. It's rather sad, but it's true. Chapter 9. Then the Lord said unto Moses, Go in unto Pharaoh and tell him, Thus saith the Lord God of the Hebrews, Let my people go, that they may serve me. For if thou refuse to let them go, and wilt hold them still, behold, the hand of the Lord upon thy cattle, which is in thy field, and upon thy horses, upon the asses, upon the camels, upon the oxen, and upon the sheep, there shall be a very grievous murrain. It's prophecy 175. Translation of murrain means plague. Another word for plague. Plague. Oh, for the word murrain, it's another word for plague. Okay. That's prophecy 176 right there. Verse 4, 177, And the Lord shall sever between the cattle of Israel and the cattle of Egypt, and there shall nothing die of all that is of the children of Israel. Prophecy 178 and verse 5. And the Lord appointed a set time by saying, Tomorrow the Lord shall do this thing in this land. And it came to pass in verse 6, All of the cattle of Egypt died, but of the cattle of the children of Israel, not one. And Moses sent out to find if this was true, that all of the Israeli cattle were still alive. Finds out it's true. And that, of course, is the great division God said would take place between Egypt and Israel. Egypt would suffer the curses, and Israel would not. Okay. But even after seeing all that, it says in verse 7, And the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, and he did not let the people go. Now, notice what this says. It didn't say Pharaoh hardened his heart. It says, and the heart of Pharaoh was hardened. I believe this is at the point where God starts hardening his heart himself. Okay, verse 8. And the Lord said unto Moses and unto Aaron, Take to you handfuls of ashes of the furnace, and let Moses sprinkle it toward the heaven in the sight of Pharaoh. And it shall become small dust in the land of Egypt, and shall be a boil breaking forth with blains upon man and upon beast throughout the land of Egypt. That's prophecy 179. And verse 10, Moses did was told. He stood before Pharaoh, threw the ashes up to heaven, and as a result, boils broke out throughout Egypt, upon man and upon beast. Verse 12, And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, and he hearkened not unto them, as the Lord had spoken to Moses. That's interesting. Pharaoh didn't even bother to say to Moses and Aaron, I'll let your people go if you take the boils away. He just simply flat out said, no, I'm not budging. Wow. I mean, it's like God hardened his heart extra hard that he didn't even bother to ask Moses and Aaron to take the boils away. I mean, I don't know if that's the correct interpretation, but that's how I see it. And verse 13. And the Lord said unto Moses, Rise up early in the morning, and stand before Pharaoh, and say to him, Thus saith the Lord God of the Hebrews, Let my people go, that they may serve me. For I will at this time send all my plagues upon thine heart, and upon thy servants, and upon thy people, that thou mayest know there is none like me in all the earth. For now I will stretch out my hand, that I may smite thee and thy people with pestilence, and thou shalt be cut off from the earth. That's prophecy 180. And in very deed for this cause have I raised thee up, for to show my power, that my name be declared throughout all the earth. Continuing on. As yet exaltest thou thyself against thy people, that thou wilt let them go. Behold, tomorrow about this time I will cause it to rain a very grievous hail, such as has not been in Egypt since the foundation thereof, or even till now. Prophecy 181. Okay. Continue on, verse 19. Send thou therefore, and gather thy cattle, and all that thou hast in the field, for upon every man and beast shall be found in the field, and shall not be brought home. The hail shall come down upon them, and they shall die. That's prophecy 182. So, for this particular plague, God is telling Moses just to gather all your cattle, get them out of the field, and give them shelter, because when the hail comes, God's not going to discriminate. Anyone who's outside, anyone, that includes the Israeli cattle, they will be struck by the hail, and they will die. Okay. And then going down in verse 22, And the Lord said unto Moses, Stretch forth thine hand toward heaven, that there might be hail in all the land of Egypt, upon every man, every beast, and upon every herb of the field throughout Egypt. And Moses did as he said. And the Lord rained hail upon the land of Egypt. So there was hail and fire mingled with the hail and fire. Very grievous, such as there was none like it in all the land of Egypt since it became a nation. And the hail smote throughout all the land of Egypt, all that was in the field, both man and beast, and the hail smote every herb of the field, and brake every tree of the field. Only in the land of Goshen, where the children of Israel were, was there no hail. Okay? Apparently, when Moses was being told to gather all the cattle, he meant gather all the cattle out of Egypt and move them into Goshen. Apparently that's what he meant. Okay. Verse 27. And Pharaoh sent and called for Moses and Aaron, and said unto them, I have sinned this time. The Lord is righteous. So at this point, Pharaoh now knows who God is. Yes. I mean, he even admits that he's sinned against the Lord. And that's huge. And I and my people are wicked. Wow, that's apparently God has finally made an impression on Pharaoh, but that's exactly what God said would happen. Egypt will know that I am Lord. And verse 28, Entreat the Lord, for it is enough that there be no mighty thunderings and hail, and I will let you go, and ye shall stay no longer. All right, verse 29. And Moses said unto him, As soon as I am gone out of the city, I will spread my hands unto the Lord, and the thunder shall cease, and neither shall be any more hail, that thou may notice that this is the Lord. But as for thee and thy servants, I know that ye will not fear the Lord. So that's prophecy 183 and 184 right there. 183, that Moses will stretch out his hand and stop the hail, and prophecy 184, But as for thee and thy servants, I know that ye will not fear the Lord. Now this is Moses prophesying. And Moses did as he said, stretched out his hand, the hail stopped. And again, Pharaoh refused to let the people go. Okay. Moving down to chapter 10. And the Lord, starting verse 1, and the Lord said unto Moses, Go unto Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart, and the heart of his servants, that I might show these signs before him. So he's hardened the heart of not only Pharaoh, but of the servants. That right there is a definite fulfillment of the prophecy in chapter 9, verse 30. And that thou mayest tell in the ears of thy son and of thy sons what things I have wrought in Egypt, and my signs which I have done to them, that ye may know that I am Lord. Moses and Aaron came in to Pharaoh, and said unto them, Thus saith the Lord God of Hebrews, How long wilt thou refuse to humble thyself before me? Let my people go, that they may serve me. Else, if thou refuse to let my people go, tomorrow I will bring locusts to the coasts, that's prophecy 185, and they shall cover the face of the earth, that's prophecy 186. And in verse 6, we have prophecy 187, and they shall fill thy houses and the houses of all thy servants and the houses of all the Egyptians. And that, of course, does come to pass in verse 14. And the locusts went up over the land of Egypt, and rested in all the coasts of Egypt. Very grievous were they. Before them there were no such locusts as they, neither after them shall be such. So these locusts were unlike any other locusts that the world had ever seen. These weren't just simply the locusts that came as a result of the fall of Adam. I mean, God created locusts that were even worse. And it says, there were no such locusts as they, neither after them shall be such. Now that's interesting. In the book of Revelation, in the book of...
Come in.
Oh, boy. I'll wait. Now, as I was saying, in the book of Revelation, John prophesies that he sees locusts in the future with like armored bodies, men of faces of men, and that sort of thing. But apparently the locusts that John sees aren't going to be any worse than the locusts that plagued Egypt, which really says something about the locusts that plagued Egypt, doesn't it? Okay. Okay, verse 21. And the Lord said unto Moses, Stretch out thine hand toward heaven, that there may be darkness over the land of Egypt, even darkness which may be felt. That's prophecy 188. And he did so, and darkness fell. It says, it was so dark, they saw not one another, neither rose away from any his place for 3 days. But all the children of Israel had light in their dwellings. Continuing on. And God called unto Moses and said, Go ye serve the Lord, only let your flocks, and Pharaoh called unto Moses, Go ye serve your Lord, only let your flocks and herds be stayed. let your little ones go with you. Pharaoh is saying to Moses, you can go, but leave your flocks and your herds behind. Moses says, can't do that. We need to offer our very best to God, and so our flocks and our herds must come along. Okay. But verse 27, the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not let them go. And Pharaoh said unto them, get out, get thee from me, take heed of myself, see my face no more, for in that day thou seest my face, thou shalt die. And this is prophecy 189, verse 29. And Moses said, thou hast spoken well, I will see thy face again no more. Now what that means is that Moses will never again come to Pharaoh. That doesn't mean Pharaoh's not going to come to Moses. Pharaoh does indeed come to Moses, but Moses never again goes to Pharaoh. Once again, that's prophecy 189. Chapter 11, verse 1. And the Lord said unto Moses, yet I will bring one plague more upon Pharaoh and Egypt. Afterwards he will let you go. When he shall let you go, he shall surely thrust you hence out altogether. Now that's prophecy 190. This is actually a repeat of something God prophesied to Moses before the very first plague came upon them. Skip down to verse 4. And Moses said, thus saith the Lord, about midnight I will go out into the midst of Egypt, and all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sitteth upon his throne, even unto the firstborn of the maidservant that is behind the mill, and all the firstborn of the beasts. That's prophecy 191. Verse 7, and continue on in verse 7. But against any of the children of Israel, not a dog shall move his tongue against man or beast, that ye may know how the Lord doth put a difference between the Egyptians and Israel. And all of these servants shall come down to me, bow down themselves unto me, saying, get out, all the people that follow thee, and afterwards I will go out. And he went out from Pharaoh in a great anger. Okay? That's prophecy 192, when he says, all the servants shall come and bow down themselves unto thee, saying, get out, all these people. Okay. All right, moving on to chapter 12. This talks about the institution of the Passover, and starting in verse 12, we have the 193rd prophecy. For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord. That's very complete. Even he's going to strike firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt. He judges the gods of Egypt, even though the gods of Egypt don't exist. But I guess gods of Egypt could refer to demonic spirits, which will be judged in the end times. So that's prophecy 193. Verse 13. And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where ye are. And when I see blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. That's prophecy 194. Okay. And the next several verses talks about how this day is to be memorialized. Passover as a memorial of God leading them out of Egypt. And then skip ahead to verse 23, please. For the Lord will pass through to smite the Egyptians, and when he seeth the blood upon the lintel and on the two side posts, the Lord will pass over the door, and will not suffer the destroyer to come into your houses to smite you. That's prophecy 195. Okay? And ye shall observe this thing for an ordinance to thee and thy sons forever. And it shall come to pass when the Lord shall come to pass when ye be come to the land which the Lord will give you. Will give you. So that's prophecy 196. According as he hath promised, that ye shall keep this service. And it shall come to pass when your children will say unto you, what do you mean by this service? That ye shall say, it is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover, who passed over the houses of all the children of Egypt, when he smote the Egyptians, delivered our houses, and the people bowed their head and worshipped. That's prophecy 197. God is prophesying how exactly, God is saying, these are the reasons why you're going to celebrate Passover. And the reasons he's giving have yet to come to pass. So that's why it's a prophecy. That's prophecy 197. And through that, the Lord, as we all know, the angel of death came, passed over all the Israeli doors that had the blood on it, but any door that did not have the blood on it, which was everybody in Egypt, the firstborn was killed, and the Bible said there was just wailing throughout all of Egypt, and there was wailing throughout all of Egypt. It was just endless wailing because there was not one house where there was not somebody that died, and that of course included Pharaoh's house. And as prophesied, Pharaoh finally relented, and he told the Israelis, go. In fact, he just said, I'm pushing you out, just take whatever you want, and away they went. With all of the wealth and all of the cattle of the Egyptians, just as the Lord had promised. All right? Well, time is winding down, and I believe that's a good place to stop because that's the end of the plagues. All right? We'll continue on next week with the book of Exodus. Thank you.